In Romans chapter 5, and beginning in verse 12, as the Apostle Paul writes to the church at Rome, he writes this, beginning in verse 12, "Therefore, just as through one man sin entered into the world." Let me repeat that. Just as through one man sin entered into the world, and death through sin. And so death spread to all men because all sinned. For until the law, sin was in the world, and sin is not imputed where there is no law. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam until Moses, even over those who had not sinned in the likeness of the offense of Adam, who is a type of him who was to come. It's been well said that a right diagnosis is half the cure. And so we ask the question, what is wrong with the world? What is wrong with people? What is wrong with the human race? Because something is obviously desperately wrong as our world is unraveling like a cheap sweater. We see all around us war and strife and envy and conflict and murder and lying. And most people look in all the wrong places to try to diagnose the problem. They claim that the problem is on the outside of man, that the problem is the environment, the problem is the government, the problem is the economy, the problem is global warming, the problem is your upbringing, your disadvantages, etc., etc., etc. But you and I know that there is no cure for a spiritual problem to be found in politics or in finance. All of these explanations fall short of where the real problem lies. And the fundamental problem of man and the world and the human race lies not outside of man, but on the inside of man. And in one word, it is sin. So what is sin? Well, sin is any lack of conformity to the holiness of God. A sin is any transgression of the law of God. Sin is falling short of the glory of God. A sin is going astray from the will of God. And this is man's greatest problem. And in order to grasp the magnitude of what is wrong with everyone and everything, we need to understand the magnitude of sin. So this necessitates that we are well taught in three major doctrines, and these will be the three headings that I'll have for us tonight. Number one, the doctrine of original sin. Number two, the doctrine of total depravity. And number three, the doctrine of universal guilt. These three are interrelated and interwoven, and these three doctrines are so well addressed in the book of Romans. So I want us to note, first of all, the doctrine of original sin. And I direct us back to Romans chapter 5 and verse 12, because original sin is that first sin of Adam and its effect upon the entire human race, bringing sin to the entire human race and death to the entire humanity. And so we read in verse 12, just as through one man. And we know who this one man is. His name is Adam. His name is mentioned twice in verse 14. And Adam will become the channel, the passageway by which sin will enter into the world. And therefore, just as through one man, sin entered into the world. Adam's one sin, his one transgression, sin entered the world like a floodgate had been opened up, and sin came pouring into the human race through the one act of disobedience by Adam. And please note it says sin in the singular, not sins in the plural, because the emphasis here is upon the presence of sin and the power of sin and the pollution of sin and the principle of sin. This all came into the human race, and from it came the plurality of sins.